So we're back at it. We are here on I'm on the dry box load. Short run about 14 miles, roughly. It's not even fully 14 miles, it's about that now. We decided to take the short run, see it pop up on the load board. And since I'm available, I just go ahead and take it. But one question I get asked a lot pertaining to container is, I see it in my comment a whole lot, and people that email me, they ask me too, should they get their own chassis? Now, getting your own chassis, you got its pros and cons. I think I made a video about that before, but now my channel is starting to get a lot more subscribers. New subscribers, they're probably just finding my channel and stuff. So I decided to make a new video in regards to getting your own chassis. Now, when you look to get your own chassis, it's good. It can be good and it can be bad. And the reason I say that is all the containers are not the same size. If you decide to get your own chassis, get you a chassis that's a combo. That's a 20 foot and you could slide it to a 40 foot. Or even if you don't slide, you have the pins on there, so it's a 40 foot, and you have the pins on there where you could put a 20 foot on it also. And when you do that, get one where the 20 foot sit further to the back and not up front. They have different type of chassis for different things you want to do with it. Coming in the game and you're not familiar what is what, you might go there and get the wrong chassis. So they have some chassis that's for them tanks. Those sit up towards the middle of the chassis. If you're gonna sit a box on it, you don't want to get that chassis, because when you go to the customer, you gotta be able to back into the door, and they could go in there with a forklift. So you want a chassis where the 20 sit at the back. It's a 40 foot chassis, and somewhere in the middle you have another set of pins that you could sit a 20 on it also. But that 20 going to be sitting further towards the back. If you're worried about fuel mileage because the container sits so far back, I don't know what you're going to do, because that chassis might not be the one for you. But if you're going to get a chassis, I recommend getting a 2040 combo. Now, the reason I say that depends on the customer you're pulling for and the area you're in. You're going to have to determine which, if you just want to get a single chassis that only carry a 20 or only carry a 40, you're going to have to make that decision based on the customer you're pulling for. Some customers move a lot of 20s, some move a lot of 40s. So if you have a customer that move a lot of 40s and you only want to get a single chassis, the customer move a lot of 40s, you don't want to go get a 20 chassis, because if you get a 20 chassis, you might not get a lot of loads from that customer for that single chassis. Another problem you might run into having a single chassis, you have a single 40 chassis, you're going in the port with a 40 foot container. You have a 20 foot you gotta take out. You want to do both transactions at the same time. That way you don't come out the port and have to go back in. So if you're going with a 40 and you gotta take out a 20 and you only have a 40 chassis, you're gonna run into the problem where you're gonna have to come out the port with that chassis wherever your yard is, or if you can find a drop yard close to the port, you're gonna have to go drop that chassis there and then go on the port and get you a 20 foot chassis. So now you're gonna have to get you a 20 foot chassis out the chassis pool. If you have your own chassis I recommend still sign up for the chassis pool. You might not use the chassis pool every day, but you have access to it whenever you need it. Another situation where you might run into you haven't used the chassis pool, you have a customer that book you for a load, no matter if it's a 20 or a 40, even if it's a combo. So you run the load, you pick up the empty, go to the customer, get loaded. You're on your way back to the port. Then you find out that that load can't go in the port for another week or another few days. So you're going to have to store that container on the chassis. So now your chassis is tied up with a container sitting on it for however long before the port decides to receive that container. In that case, you just lost your chassis. You're going to have to get a chassis out the chassis pool if you want to work them days instead of just sitting down and not working. That's going to tie up your chassis. So somebody might say, well, buy more than one chassis. That's another option you could do, but you could never have enough chassis because you don't know how many boxes you're going to ever have sitting on a chassis waiting to go in the port. Sometimes I have 4 containers sitting on the yard. They might be there for a week, some might be there 2 weeks. They're there for different amount of days. So in those cases, I have to use a chassis pool. I have to go to the chassis yard, get a chassis, so I could continue working until I could turn those in. So I just got my paperwork, and I haven't booked another load yet. I haven't booked another load yet because I'm waiting on my dedicated to get some loads, finalize some loads I have for this week before I go ahead and book a load. But those are some of the things about having your own chassis. Now, on the other hand, when it comes to the chassis, you don't pay for the chassis. You have to work the chassis bill into the rate for the load. So when you book these loads, you gotta make sure that the rate for the chassis is in whatever you book the load from. Whatever you book the load for. Some customers will pay together and some will pay it separate. So you might have to bill the customer 2 bills. The regular freight bill for the load, and then you send them a bill for the chassis. The chassis will be billed on your scat code. So if you don't pay that chassis bill, it's all on you. It's not on the customer, it's on you. You owe a lot of chassis bill, they're going to lock you out the port, and that's by you using the port chassis. They'll lock you out the chassis pool until you pay that chassis bill.